Sabrina the Animated Series, Episode 17. Sabrina complains that she doesn't do enough socializing because she keeps spending the evening being forced to help Quigley with his chip collection. Another moment where he's an inexcusable jerk. Harvey's friend is just annoying, somehow thinking they'll want to help with Spitball. It turns out everyone in homeroom is invited to Jem's party. Why the hell does Sabrina ask why Jem invited everyone but her? Sure, there never is a reason for Jem hating Sabrina, but she knows she does regardless. Zelda says she has to go to the Halloween ball with her, as she hasn't missed one in a long time. She's actually worried because Quigley won't let them go because he hates them partying with other witches, even though she could just warp to the party anyways. Who the hell does he think he is to determine what their social lives are like? Then Quigley shows up and wastes a bunch of time, and Salem makes a sarcastic remark at his expense, and everyone thankfully laughs at them. Quigley was being mocked for his hobby. Sabrina comes home angry, and I guess she used magic to put red electricity around her head just to look menacing, when she should know she isn't allowed to do that. Good thing she isn't punished. She complains to Salem about Jem humiliating her. Salem lampshades her wanting to go to the party when she hates Jem. It's especially dumb because she didn't want to go to Jem's party in Witch Switch. As usual, I wish it was explained that Sabrina could use brainwashing to get invited, but is against it, even if it would be inconsistent because she's fine with brainwashing in the show. Instead, because convolution, she tells the students that she's throwing a party, despite how restrictive her uncle is. I like that at one point Jem looks embarrassed while the students are on Sabrina's side. But the voice of Harvey's friend is just grating. After Sabrina lists off ingredients, why does a glutton like Salem say stomach pump because he's seen her book? I guess Salem's against brainwashing her, so that's why he doesn't use magic to make her good at cooking. Eventually, Salem has to remind her somehow she promised everyone that Quigley wouldn't be at the house. Why did he have to remind her? But I like that it reveals that Quigley's even unpopular at her school. Also, I just have to assume she thinks she's too moral to turn him into a statue the whole party or something. Eventually, he wishes he could go to an auction. The whole family encourages him, and he says that he couldn't leave them all alone without adult supervision. It's lampshaded that they're over 600 years old anyways, and Quigley gets convinced to leave. Salem protests, and I find it creepy that Sabrina strokes his chin to make him purr because he has human intelligence. Oh right, Salem's an adult, so Quigley leaving wouldn't make them without adult supervision. It's amazing that Hilda tells Sabrina good luck with your party, because I didn't expect her to be as lenient about this as 80s Hilda would be. The sitcom ants would probably glare at Sabrina for throwing a party. They use magic to get new outfits, and it turns out Sabrina burnt the pizza. Why can't you do anything right in this show? It's not funny. The doorbell rings and she's upset. Finally, Salem lampshades her being scared because the food's not ready because she is a witch. She casts a spell saying enormous pizza you will make. But somehow, magic interprets this to mean that the appliances will make pizza automatically. It could have easily been that the magic would just create a pizza. She would have done that, because there's no way that would backfire. If she can turn a bridge to stone through shapeshifting, she could shapeshift the air to make a pizza. I assume that her leaving the appliances alone to answer the door means that a huge pizza is going to be made. At first everyone's quiet, and Sabrina awkwardly tries but fails to make them all start conversing. Now I have to assume they came here specifically to humiliate her. But they sure went out of their way to go all the way here just to do that unrealistically instead of doing something more fun. I say that because you'd think they'd have plenty of experience with conversing at parties. At one point, one of them tries to humor her, and Jem glares at her, so hopefully this is why they were unrealistically silent at the party. Sabrina tells them all what to do, and it actually works. Then what took so long? She goes into the room, and somehow she screams multiple times at what she sees. It's just not Sabrina at all to have Sabrina screaming. It's so disrespectful to her. She could have just used magic to undo the spell instantly. The whole kitchen is a mess. Thankfully, she does think to undo the spell, after Jem witnessed it all, and told everyone, and they somehow believed her enough to follow her into the room. They see the pizzas, and Sabrina thanks her for accidentally complimenting her. The fact that nobody believes in witches is really the only flimsy excuse for why she doesn't know she's magical at this point. So I guess she thinks demons cleaned the kitchen just to spite her. Why does Jem get left alone with the pizzas? So she ends up using salt to ruin the pizza for everyone. She also shook the soda. The doorbell rings. I wish she'd just erase people's memories to get a do-over, because I don't hate her this much. And then someone with a guitar and a lame instrument shows up out of nowhere to play kazoo music in the room. He expects money, and she at least gives it to him while mad about one lousy song. Sabrina angsts that she could never return to school after this, even though obviously she could erase their memories of this. It's frustrating, because that's what you'd do in her place. That would make the tension pointlessly fake, but I could forgive that since even being judged for a couple seconds is still punishment enough. So I still wouldn't be jealous of her when she'd still feel humiliated. And it's easy to assume she can't erase memories when she's the most incompetent Sabrina. Little Sabrina is way more competent than her, so her being a preteen never worked as an excuse. She summons a spell book and reads that she could cast a spell to put life back into a dead party. Why is she surprised at seeing a scary alien who juggles and walks into the house? Why does this appear if she wouldn't have imagined it, because the book somehow didn't include a picture of it and describe what would happen? It would just put life back into the dead party. And as usual, it's forced that she doesn't instantly undo the spell, and instead he gets thrown down the basement stairs. I guess he's pretty hardy. This spell means that Harvey and his friend's scary outfits are going to be even more scary to Sabrina, as they'll blend in with the people like the flying skeleton. Why is this a part of a spell to make a party better? Witches aren't stereotypical in this show. And why didn't Jem scream right after she saw a green light around a door? Instead, she only screams after looking in the room. So I have to assume that witches made green light impossible for mortals to perceive. It's satisfying to see Jem see scary things and scream a lot. I like that it's just her being scared. But logically, everyone in the house would hear her scream instantly. And it doesn't make up for all the awkwardness Sabrina's going through with her party being ruined. At first I thought Sabrina knew Harvey's friend was here. But even after she hears his distinctive voice, she still throws him in the basement. His voice is worse than Manic's, that's why I'm complaining about it. Her aunts warp home, and Harvey shows up, and Jem runs away screaming, and sees all the scary creatures in the basement and screams. It's annoying that Sabrina doesn't enjoy this, because seeing the annoying characters suffer is the whole appeal of watching the show. I like that we see Chloe tell her off that it would have been a great party if Jem didn't try to ruin it. It also would have been a great party if people were confident enough to start conversing right away, instead of trying to humor her. Harvey reassures the mortals that all of the monsters are just people in costumes and masks. So they're welcome in the party after all. I guess the monsters are just that nice that they don't want to correct Harvey. And everyone dances to the music. Why does Jem get to enjoy dancing with a skeleton even though he unrealistically roars at her? I thought when the mortals saw the monsters they'd say they were cool and that the Halloween party had great special effects, which would be nicer, like in the sitcom. But this is more realistic than the sitcom, because why did they ever think that stuff like talking and moving furniture could be achieved by technology? But somehow the students aren't impressed or even react at all when they see the monsters. Why do we have to see Quigley get told the truth? Thankfully, he says he can't be too angry because he got a potato chip. But then, despite complimenting their honesty, he says she's still grounded for 2 weeks. Don't you want to reward her honesty? An alien lands on him, but the catharsis is ruined as he says make that 3 weeks. She should learn to stop being honest with him because he just punishes her for it. If her aunts were so fine with her having a party, there's no way they wouldn't completely overpower his authority. The party didn't actually inconvenience the house. Even if it did, magic could be used to clean it all up instantly, so he has no right to say no to a party. So it goes without saying that's horrible writing to ground her because she did nothing wrong to deserve it. Sure, in a meta-logic sense, normal parents would ground their child for throwing a party without permission. But her real parental figures are okay with it. Why was the writer so sadistic with the ending? If I were a writer for the show, I would just not write Quigley in the episode at all. Which does happen occasionally. But it doesn't ruin the episode because we don't see her suffer through being grounded. And only Quigley wanted this. So maybe her aunts never enforced this decision anyways. Quigley didn't get nearly enough slapstick at the end. It'd be better if he fell down the stairs like Chris in Sonic X because that'd get him hurt multiple times. This was a boring episode about Sabrina throwing a party because Jem didn't invite her to hers. Even though she didn't immediately kick her out of her party last time she went to her party. And a Halloween party episode was already done in the sitcom and the 90s comic. So there's no point in watching or making the episode, because just like in those stories, monsters show up. But this time, nothing else interesting is done, and the students somehow don't even emote when they see them. So I have to assume they always assumed there are people in masks and costumes. And makeup, to explain why them blinking didn't freak them out. They would have at least been startled. Not only is the episode cliche when it does actually get going, but before that, it spent way too much time on the party having a hard time getting off the ground. And Jem ruining the pizza as soon as she was trusted to be alone with it. It's lame when all of the conflict is forced, as it can make the writer look sadistic when just lazy writing could be the real explanation. I won't say that's forced that Jem is here though, because even if she wasn't invited, she would have crashed the party anyways. I guess the moral of the story was supposed to be don't throw parties, but it never showed the real consequences of them, so it isn't too convincing. Quigley only found out the party happened and grounded her because she grabbed the idiot ball and told him when no kid would, so that's not a real consequence of parties either. Sabrina the Animated Series, Episode 18. Sabrina uses magic to send hankies over to her and make them float. And eventually she puts a bow tie on, and Quigley the asshole asks her where she thinks she's going. She wants to go with Chloe when apparently Saturday is chore day. I thought it was family day. Why doesn't he just have people suffer during the week, instead of one of the 2 days that's supposed to be a day off for Sabrina? Why doesn't she just turn him into a statue until she's done what she wants to do? Why does the show ever dedicate any time to Quigley? It can't give any enjoyment to the audience or be interesting to watch. And he doesn't even say he's gonna pay her for the chores. But at least we can easily assume that. Quigley says you should follow the rules twice, ignoring that right before this Sabrina mentioned child labor laws. So if the writer knew to write this, why did he even write Quigley at all? He's also an asshole by saying no magic, because he wants to torture her because of his personal bias. He should know this is only going to guarantee she'll use magic more than ever when she's grown up, just to spite him. And she probably would have used magic for chores when she grew up no matter what he did, because even Zelda does that. So she does chores the boring way. I at least liked seeing her wear a bandana. She tells Quigley to hand over a toy rocket for her to dust it. I wonder if it's going to get broken, which would be his fault for not putting it somewhere where it couldn't get broken. He wonders if a don't touch sign will remind her not to touch it, and she sounds sarcastic when saying that'll help. Yeah, if he really cared about it, he'd tell the ants to cast a spell to put a force field around it, and keep it on the floor so that it can't get damaged from getting knocked off. I assume the reason she doesn't cast a spell to make a force field is that he keeps saying no magic. But that's no excuse for nobody in the house casting a spell to make it indestructible. He would never know. Sabrina reaches for the spooky jar, and now an alarm goes off and a message tells her that's for emergencies only, without clarifying what an emergency could possibly be, and says that traces of magic could get left on her fingers if she washes it and doesn't wash her hands. I wish that was explained with a magic book earlier in the franchise. Also, this isn't the case in the other episodes. Somehow she assumes that the message was lying to her when warning her to force the plot in a bullshit, lazy way. So her just holding a book causes the creation of a person who's also annoying to the audience in a forced way, when she didn't want her to show up. And Sabrina just stands there gawking the whole time when she'd really point to get rid of her instantly. Salem had no excuse for not pointing to wash Sabrina's hands as soon as he knew she was disobeying the rule. He also acts unlikable by walking away and refusing to help her when it could end the plot right now. Sabrina lectures the idiot on the rule about picking up after herself. Why doesn't she turn into a statue? She wouldn't trust her to follow any rules at this point, let alone a rule to not do anything. Instead, the girl approaches Harvey. She has such an annoying laugh. Again, there's no excuse for annoying the audience. Chloe knowing about magic only causes Sabrina to waste her time giving her exposition. Then the toy rocket gets broken, and the reason it was broken wasn't explained, because the writer and artist were too untalented to think about how it could possibly make sense that it would be broken, because she'd have to intentionally drop it. Chloe says that if this is Cinderella, no wonder her sisters hated her. She could have easily not been Cinderella. It goes without saying that she wasn't like that. Salem advises Sabrina to use the spooky jar, taking forever waiting through his boring dialogue. What's all this bullshit about how she's only allowed to use it for an emergency now, when previous episodes had her aunt allow her to use it for inane reasons? Spooky wouldn't need to exist if the episodes consisted of multiple stories, because then it wouldn't need worthless padding. She could conserve magic by grabbing a magical necklace and using that to cast magic instead, and that'd be faster. Sabrina says she sent the wrong person to Once Upon a Time land. That never happened because she would have been imagining her getting warped there. Salem expects me to believe Harvey changing a fairy tale would have serious consequences, even though witches can erase memories so he wouldn't have to remember it, and why would it matter if one book is changed? He must have been sent to another universe that's at a point in time where he was sent to it. Even then, it would only change the book in Sabrina's universe if that's what the spell was supposed to do. And why would her spell also include the clause that if the wrong person was sent there, it would change the book? Sabrina somehow thinks she needs Salem's help to save Harvey, when really she just points to warp him back to her right away. The writer really wrote himself into a corner and had to have this happen to have the rest of the episode. And Salem references spy fiction, wasting a ton of time. It's trying to be funny, but the episode was so frustratingly disrespectful that I hate it. Chloe wishes she could go. Why wouldn't she? She accompanied her on her last adventure. Sabrina uses a letter and warps to Harvey, and for some reason, at first he doesn't recognize her until he does. And it's so unlikely that one of the stepsisters would look and sound like Jem. Okay, she should have explained that this is another universe, but that was a given. And in another universe, Jem's family line could exist too. They encounter some other fairy tale characters, which is a complete waste of time that's painfully unfunny. I do like seeing that Goldilocks is being arrested for trespassing, even if that's not hard to think up. Sabrina finds out the fairy godmother is listed in the yellow pages and calls her on a payphone, only for her to just get the answering machine, which tells her she went to the fairy godmother's annual convention. Sabrina hammers in the message of the episode. Sabrina complains that they only have until noon before they're stuck here forever. Again, she says she'll never break the rules again. Why write that? Don't you realize everyone's going to know that she won't keep true to that, and it'd never change anyone's mind, so it's just pointless? So much of the story is a waste of time. Sabrina finally does see the convention, which has the godmothers talk about boring normal work things, wanting medical expenses paid. I wish I had a lot more stuff like this in Once Upon a Time land. Sabrina somehow has to take a long time talking to her, and she says the only way out is for her to put on a pair of shoes. And somehow it has to be before noon. How's a fairy godmother a lot weaker than a witch? And she warps her home. There's no way she wants to just permanently send her home. And Harvey. I get her spitefully wanting to punish her for failing to get Cinderella back. Actually, I don't, because even she hates her. So why would she want her back in the book? I get her spitefully wanting to punish her for wasting her time talking to her so much. The show doesn't have enough self-awareness to establish that because we're supposed to think she's a nice person. Cinderella refuses the slippers and just wants to go barefoot, like that's in character. What is it about bad cartoons and demonizing Disney princesses, with both this and AOSCH? What's so funny about portraying them in a completely out-of-character way? Sabrina gives her fashion advice to manipulate her, and she takes forever to put the shoes back on. Harvey gets warped home and says that while he feels like something happened that he should be mad at her about, he forgot it and is dizzy. Quigley thinks it's Salem's fault his toy rocket broke, and Sabrina self-destructively owns up to it. I don't think it's a good message to teach people to be stupid enough to say that they broke a rule when they don't have to, because they could get fired for it as an adult. And what if they have kids? The story keeps dragging on, and Sabrina decides that rules exist for a reason, and she and Chloe almost get hit by a vehicle. So she gets her point. I think Chloe is supposed to be smart. This boring, frustrating episode was about traces of magic from the spooky jar in Sabrina's hand, somehow just now causing an annoying person to get summoned from another universe, even though Sabrina didn't want that. There's no way she wouldn't have washed her hands of the traces of magic when it warned her that bad stuff could happen otherwise. It should have spent the entire episode punishing her for breaking a rule that a kid would believably break. Last episode already punished her for breaking a rule because she was grounded for throwing a party. And that was kind of believable to break. It's not her fault she had the idiot ball. And speaking of that, somehow she doesn't instantly point to warp the disobedient idiot back home. And somehow Salem's also too dumb to think of it. And they're too dumb to think of simply turning her into a statue. So the whole episode can happen, with her wandering around another universe seeing fairy tale characters with almost nothing new done with the idea. So it's a creative wasteland. Cinderella wasn't like this, so she didn't have to be called Cinderella. And there's no way what's supposed to be a sympathetic main character in a fairy tale like hers would have been like that in her book in-universe. Not that it even mattered to the plot, because she learned her lesson regardless that God forbid she break one rule. You don't teach a message by pissing the audience off. Don't break the rules is way too general for the show that's already dedicated to teaching that message.